Joe, it's great to talk to you. Your expertise is values. That's quite an interesting subject. It's one that I've been trying to understand for a long time, as I'm sure a lot of people are. What does it actually mean? What do we mean by values?
Well, that's a really good question because the word is used a lot. You hear family values, you hear corporate values, you see values on walls in places. But really, it's actually very simple, but I think it's been used in a lot of different contexts. Our values are the things that matter most to us in life. They're the things that drive us. They can also be called our personal motivators and our drivers. Most people don't truly know what they are. And I think the real power is when you discover that and finding out what it is that drives you and how that shows up in your decisions, the relationships you have, the goals that you set. You know, really, they're under everything that we do.
So give us a couple of examples, because there are long lists of values that you could choose, but typically give us 3 or 4 examples of what is a value.
Okay, so what is a value? Straight off, people generally go for, well, honesty is a value, integrity is a value, respect is a value. And they absolutely are, and they might be for some people and not for the others, because we're all individual. But other ones, it's like really uncovering things that drive people. So you might be creativity or belonging or exploring or making a difference, for example. So some of these other words and actually finding out what we're made up of. If we've got a bit of honesty in there, making a difference, discovery, adventure, and then actually using them consciously. And that's the key, is that we use our values consciously each and every day.
So I'm guessing that you're saying that we've all got values, whether we know it or not. It's just a case of identifying what they are, recognising them, and then actually bringing them to our consciousness.
Yes.
How?
Good question. Hire me.
Well, yeah, that might be the answer. Yes, and that's why you are an expert and I'm not.
There are some very simple ways that you can discover them, and I do like to make it, what can be quite a complex subject, quite simple. Is discovering them. There's a couple of ways in, and let's start off with just 3 very high-level questions. What's important to you? What do you enjoy? And what frustrates you? So we'll come to what frustrates you last, because we have to do something with that one too to get the opposites out. But what's important to you? So what's important to you, Dave? Tell me something that's important to you.
Do we mean personally or in work or just in life?
Pick life or work.
Freedom. I like to feel free. I don't like to feel restricted.
So what does freedom mean to you?
So freedom to me would be not having to do a 9-to-5 job, not really having a weekend and a Monday to Friday mentality, those sort of things, you know, free to please myself.
Okay. So freedom itself may well be the value. That's for you to decide if that word resonates with you. And some people, when you say what's important, they might say my job. So if that is the answer, we take it a bit further and we say, well, what does that give you? You know, or my team is important. Well, what does it give you? Mm-hmm. And then different things might come out, like sense of achievement, fulfillment, gives me the opportunity to be creative. And these are the words that are our values, and then we start to get to the essence of who we are. So you might have gone straight for freedom, and that might well be the value. But if people are just asking the questions, it's take it that one step further. Ask, what does it give you? What does it bring you? Mm-hmm. Family is one that people often say, you know, what's important to you? My family. But again, take that further. What does family give you? Because it can mean different things to different people. Some people will say fun, some people will say love. Whatever it is, it's that getting underneath to get to the value. And
you mentioned that third one, which is about frustration. So
yeah.
Can we have values around frustration, or is it just that when we feel frustrated, that's showing that there's a values clash?
Yeah, it's about that. We don't want to be frustrated by our values, because bearing in mind that they're driving everything we do. But by asking the question, what frustrates people, they can generally get to something that triggers them quite fast. So what frustrates you?
Being late, and I always am.
Okay, so being late frustrates you. So what's the opposite of that is important for you?
To be on time, I guess.
Okay, so to be on time.
Leave myself more time and you know, commit to being somewhere when I should be.
Okay, so I heard the word commit there.
Mm-hmm.
So commitment, maybe punctuality. Could
Yeah.
be. I'd need to do a little bit more with you to find the actual word, but we've got the essence of what it is. So if you're asking the question, what frustrates you, just don't leave it there. Turn it over and find the opposite. So for me, if somebody lies to me, we go,
Yeah.
a really important value of mine is truth.
So this is making more sense now, because people will be asking themselves, so what? So we find out what our values are. So what? What difference does it make to me in my home life, in my business life? So I'll ask you, so what? Why do we need to know this stuff? What difference does it make when people start to become more in tune with the values?
Oh my gosh, it makes a difference in everything. I think decisions, the way you relate to people, how you set your goals. And if we can maybe just take those three areas, which are three quite big areas: decisions, relationships, goals. We're all involved with those each and every day. So decisions. If you know, one, first of all, what your values are, and then what they mean to you, because I have a value of freedom and just found out that you do too, but it might mean different things to both of us. So it's not enough to just say, hey, freedom's the value. So we know what our values are. We then have to define what they mean to us, and then we've got to use them. So if you've got a decision to make, and one way takes you towards your values and one way doesn't, then it helps you to make that decision. And also sometimes what you find, what's really key with the values is knowing the priority order, because we will default into our top values every single day. Intuitively, you'll be acting in line with your top values. And when you're not in line with your values, you'll know about it, because you will feel frustrated or restless inside that something's out of alignment. So once we know what they are and we know the order, we get a decision to make and we look in and we check with them. And I've made huge decisions in my life, initially based on intuition, and I've known perhaps actually this is the right decision, but I check in with my values. And it just really helps and makes it clearer. But the thing of knowing your values, I was working with a gentleman a couple of days ago, and he'd got a really big decision to make. And he'd got a value of freedom and a value of security, and they were next to each other. And he was having a values conflict within his own values, because one decision gave him the freedom that he wanted, and the other one went towards security, and they sat like this together. And that really was a conflict. So we had to do a bit deeper work around that and look at which one was the priority for him, and the freedom value was the priority one. So we got him to step into that to make the decision. But what he was able to do was make a more informed decision. He knew why he was feeling the way he was feeling, and he consciously chose, actually, these are the values that I'm making this decision in line with. And I see this a lot in the work I do, people making career decisions, sometimes aimlessly, or following the shiny penny, or setting up their business based on, actually, this feels like a really good idea, but not checking in on the foundations and saying, if I do this, is it in line with what is most important to me?
And for anybody watching this, this is where you really come into your own. This is the really important stuff for leaders, managers, business owners, executives, who just people who are interested in this stuff. This really matters, doesn't it? Because people can go through years worth of frustration, not understanding why, either at work or at home or in their job. And it could be a values thing.
Do you know what? It normally always is, Dave. It's normally always a values, because most people don't know them. You know, I discovered mine 10 years ago in my 30s, and as soon as I saw them in black and white, I actually realised why I wasn't happy in the career I was in. And I'd chosen something based on actually my value of freedom. But when I saw what they were in black and white, freedom was my number 5 value. And the ones above it, I wasn't in alignment with. And it suddenly all made sense. And then, you know, as I chose to set up my own business, I was very conscious, did it fit with my values? And people do make these decisions all the time because maybe the next person's making them, or they're told that it's really great to do this in your business, or you've got to have a social media outlet, or you've got to have a book, or whatever it might be. And I'm not saying don't do these things, but actually check in. Does it fit with who you are? Because fundamentally our values are who we are.
And of course, there's another important thing. There's a word you've used that I think we'd all like to unpack, and that's that word intuition. That feeling inside sometimes that we get, that we say, I don't know why I feel like this, but I just do. Or I wished I'd followed that feeling. That's what you call intuition, isn't it? And that's related possibly to values. So
well, it's interesting.
How does that work?
As you're asking me that question, I knew you were going to say intuition. I could feel it. So because we all have this gut feeling, whether we feel it in our gut or in our heart, that we instinctively know, but maybe we're a bit afraid to take that step. And what we can do is then check in with our values, because our values are our intuition made conscious. And often the decisions that are the right ones are the hardest and the scariest. I've moved countries twice now based on an intuition, but checking in with the values. And intuitively, it felt like it was the right thing to do. This is about 10 years ago now. I moved over to Dubai. And I checked in. Did it fit with my core values of energy, truth, love, connection, freedom, fun? Yes, it did. But there were certain things that didn't fit, like I'd missed my family. So I had to look at how I was still going to meet those values while being in another country. So you're more conscious about it. And it might not work overnight, but I will absolutely put a guarantee on it. If you make a decision in line with your values, it will work.
So remind us of that saying again, because it's a great saying.
Your values are your intuition made conscious.
Brilliant. So if you're about to make a decision and something inside is saying, no, don't do it, it's going to be really hard to turn this opportunity down, but it's the right thing to do. There's a reason for that. Do you need to actually consciously go and discover what the value is, or do you just go with the intuition and say, right, okay, I'm following it. I don't know why, but it's happening for a reason.
You can do either. I think the more and more you work with intuition, you're likely to act on it and just trust it. If I get a feeling now, I will trust it and just say no, it doesn't feel right, and I don't need to explain myself. But I think it's worth checking in as well, because the more you do that, the more you can exercise it in the future.
And we hear a lot about entrepreneurs and business leaders who have that knack of tuning in with their intuition and making those decisions based on that. Often the right decisions. I mean, I'm sure they make the wrong ones sometimes, but when they're inventing things, when they're creating things, when they're taking something in a completely new direction and people go, why? And they go, I don't know why, I just felt it. That's your values and your intuition working together. Absolutely,
because there'll be something in you that's driving you to do it, and that drives the passion. I think one of the other questions that I mentioned earlier was, what is it you enjoy doing? Because that's a great way to get your values out. Because when you're actually in your element and you're in full passion, you stop and say, well, what am I doing? What is this giving me? What's going on here? And the more you're doing that and you're in the flow, your intuition is kicking in as well, and you're getting ideas.
So I'm loving this. I'm a talker. I'm enjoying getting to know you and understand what values are, and I'm really into this. So what does that tell you about a value that I might have, or values, or something about me? What would you say?
Well, firstly, this is not I'm not going to answer this question, but I'm not here to analyse you. My role would be to ask you a few more questions. So the fact you're loving it, you're enjoying talking, I don't want to put my words on it. So what is it for you? What are you getting from this? I'm
very curious. Okay. I like to get to know people. I like to talk. I'm a communicator. And I believe, take a genuine interest in people. I like other people to find out. So I'm sure people will discover so much about you through this interview. That's what drives me.
Okay. So just I heard communication, the curiosity, meeting new people, the connection piece. Do these sound like things that might make you up?
Yeah.
So there might be a clue there. Some of those may be your values. If they resonate with you, then...
So someone like you in fact, let's not say even someone like you, Joe Simpson, has a role in helping people to discover what those values are. Because we've all got them, we just perhaps bury them a little bit. And like that exercise then, which I quite enjoyed doing, it was so easy. And if you'd have said to me, get a pen and paper and write them down, I don't think I could have done it. But the way that you just drew those out, might start to make me think about what I could do with those values perhaps in terms of a business or career or the way I live my life. Is that how it would work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've talked a little bit about decisions, but also now I know more about you and what your values are. I've shared some of mine. Is if we were to go into business together, I think it's really important to know each other's values and to not just know them on the surface level, to find out what do they mean to you and how do you show up with them. Because if we were about to collaborate, I would really want to understand where you were coming from and what was most important to you about the project or the piece of work that we were doing, and ideally the same the other way around. And to take it one step further, if we were going into business together, we then need to look at, okay, well, what are the shared values in the business? Now, they may not be the same as our values, but we'd need to have an alignment with them. And this is a subject that you're really going to get me on now, because this is really where I am passionate about this, is a lot of companies start from the outside in and not the other way round. They'll decide these nice set of shiny values and they'll put them up on the wall and say, these are our values, you need to live in line with them. Well, one, they're just wallpaper. Two, they don't mean anything to people because, okay, well, what does that mean to me? How am I going to live in line with that? Now, I have a background in banking, so I can talk a little bit about the banks here, but the banks are a great example of this, or not, in that following the crisis, a lot of the banks decided to reinvent their values because ones they had previously, quite clearly, weren't the right ones, and said things like customer financial well-being is at the heart of everything that we do, customer satisfaction, etc. And so a lot of them have reinvented their values. And while that's good, and I hope that they're the right values now, just because something goes wrong, you shouldn't need to reinvent your values. If your values are really what you stand for, they should be the anchor point that you go back to when things are not working.
So do you think that there's a mistake that people make, that businesses make, about values being a marketing exercise rather than something that absolutely powers you?
Yes.
Someone said to me once that values are the things that you would hire and fire on.
Yep. They're what you stand for, they're what you would not compromise on, and there absolutely should not be marketing slogans.
So people watching this video who want to find out more about values and maybe just do a little exercise for themselves about discovering their values and that conscious effort to make them come alive almost.
Yeah.
What could they do? What 3 things could they do right now when they finish watching this video?
Okay, so first of all, they need to look at their own, and then they see the business through their own and the other people in it. So individually, I have a 3-step process, which is to discover them, to define them, and to ignite them. So to discover your values, just do a reminder of the questions that I mentioned earlier. What's important to you? Whatever the answer is, what does that give you? So that you're ultimately getting to the essence of the word. What do you enjoy doing? Even if it's just something, it might be skiing or mountaineering or cycling. What does that give you? It might give you energy, vitality, fun. Whatever that is, start to pull these words out. And what frustrates you? And remember with that one, that when you answer that, to flip it over. So that's the discover part. And then to define what they mean to you. And we've given examples here of what different values mean to us, and they mean, one word can mean different things. And the final piece is to ignite them. So how do you ignite them in all the decisions you make, in the relationships? Because the better I know myself, the better I can find out about you and know what makes you tick. And you mentioned hiring and firing. Yeah, are people in line with the values in the business? The conflict resolution. So if there's a problem or something's gone wrong, go back to the values. Okay, so in order to resolve this, how do we resolve it in line with our values? If this is what we stand for, what takes us towards them? What takes us away from them?
So people can drive themselves and their businesses forward and their own lives by just doing those 3 things and getting them out. And just to talk a little bit about you, you're an expert in this field, clearly, and passionate. And I know you've done a lot of work and research, and you've got all sorts of products and papers that people can pick up on to find out more. But in terms of Joe Simpson, you're working with all sorts of people to do more on values. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I speak at conferences on values, so my real passion is to get this message out to as many people as possible, because I believe everybody should know what their values are and be conscious about them. So I speak at conferences, I work with leaders in organisations, I help teams discover their own values. So I'm working with quite a lot of corporate companies at the moment who very forward thinking, what I sort of called leaders who are sort of in the new way of working. A lot of old methods have slipped away, or they no longer serve. You know, we're moving away from this sort of command, control, tell, do culture to a more collaborative, co-creative, let's get to know each other culture. And I love working with leaders that want to take their companies from good to great, or great to dynamic. And this piece really helps, because what it does is it helps individuals get to know each other better. And when you do that and you get a sense of shared values, and then you absolutely align it and see where that fits with the company values, you just get this energy surge and people become alive and active, and it builds trust. And the deeper trust you have got within your company, the more you can do. You can build courageous conversations from that place. If you and I completely trust each other, it enables us to have what might be perceived to some people as a difficult conversation. And, you know, as a result of that, we get a richer relationship, we work better. People aren't afraid to challenge each other because they know it's done from the right place.
Your time is now, clearly, because I think if we'd have had this conversation 20 or 30 years ago, where perhaps we weren't encouraged to show our feelings, get our values out, let people know sometimes that we're perhaps not agreeing with them and all of those things. But clearly now, particularly with social media, the internet, the way that information is shared, the way we're encouraged to interact, to create ideas, clearly people can't suppress values. You can't hide them for so long. Sooner or later, the real you is going to come out, whether it's in a tweet, on a Facebook message, in a report you write, in a speech you give. So better to get in tune with your values now and be honest and open about them before you get found out for the wrong reasons, presumably.
Absolutely. And I love what you said there about the real you, because a lot of people aren't being themselves truly. They're not bringing all of themselves to the table, so to speak, because they're scared to, or actually this is how we do things around here and this is how you do things in business. There's a lot of preconceptions and beliefs, or I better do it this way because that's how the organisation's always done it. And this is why I love working with forward-thinking people who actually know there's another way and are not afraid to take it. You know, it might mean challenging the status quo a little bit, or taking things on a way that's going to shake things up. But if that route is in line with what is most important to either you as the individual or the team, then do it. Do it, because it will work and worlds will change. Because then a lot of people are obviously focused on results and profit, quite rightly, and this is where the setting the goals and the vision comes in, because that piece absolutely has to be there, and the skills and the tactics and the strategies. But if you do all of that without it sitting on the foundation of who you truly are, it's not going to be sustainable. And
give me an example of where you've perhaps worked with somebody or a company or a group of people, and this exercise of getting the values out has really helped the person to grow themselves or grow the business or grow the team. Give me an example.
Okay. Oh, I could pick any one of many. I'll give you a leadership team that I've worked with recently, and they were already a good team, and they wanted to go to deeper levels, but they were sort of all spread out in different parts of Europe. So one of their things was they didn't see each other regularly. So actually doing the values exercise, we got their team values out, but only after we'd looked deeper at their individual values. And there was some remarkable ahas going on around the room, because while they had a shared goal, you know, one person might get to it in one way and another in another way. So as an example, there was two gentlemen. One had a value of energy and positive energy, and another one had a value of excellence. And what they saw was, while they both wanted to achieve the same thing, sometimes their way of doing it frustrated the other one, but they couldn't put their finger on it. And the gentleman who saw, oh wow, he's driven by excellence, that's why he's just straight, let's just get it done, let's just go for it, this means excellence. But he wanted it done with all the positive energy, and this other guy was like, let's just get it done. And it was, they both wanted it done, but the way was different. And when they had that conversation, it really deepened their relationship, because they then said, how do we make sure we include both of these in how we do it? And I've got another example just sprung to mind. I was working with a brilliant company yesterday, and I was working with their team, and we were looking at individual values first of all. And I did a demonstration with one guy in the team, and I asked him what frustrated him. And he said, I absolutely hate people who need to have absolute clarity. And the girl opposite him just started laughing, and she went, one of my values is absolute clarity. So, and they were like, right, that explains A and B and C. And I said, well, how could you two work together? And they said, well, we need to have a conversation. But this has just opened up a lot, because we now realise some of the things that have happened. So they went away to actually talk about.
And it's great, because it's not that one's right and one's wrong. It's just that they've just got different values. And once you get them out, as you said at the beginning of this interview, then at least you can make progress from a point of problem solving, rather than name calling or pointing fingers or getting frustrated. You can start to work with saying, okay, we're different, even if it's the same value, coming at it from a different way. So, okay, final thing then. It's been absolutely fascinating, but just one more time, I'm going to say one word, and I want you to come back with whatever comes into your head. So I say values. Joe Simpson says,
you need to know them. They are the most important things in your life. So discover them, define them, and go out there and live them.
Brilliant. It's been absolutely fascinating. Joe Simpson, thanks for talking to us.
Thank you, Dave.